Hello, 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 my friends. Scotty J here back again with another episode of 9 Hours, 9 Persons, and 9 Doors. Last time, we were trapped in a kitchen, and after getting out, finding a code, and learning about hexadecimal, we have made it deck down to C deck. We traveled down the hallway a little bit and found this large hospital room with 3 new numbered doors. After that, we ran into our crew from beforehand, so let's see what they have to say. There you have it, our half of the story. His part finished, Ace fell silent. For a moment, Junpei was silent, in thought, and then he spoke. Okay, let me see if I got all this straight. When you guys got here, the bases for the Reds were already gone. And you looked all over this room, but you couldn't find anything. So you figured that there might be something in the hallway with all the doors. So you went and had a look? Yeah. And while you were looking around, you heard voices? Uh-huh. So you followed the voices and came back here? Indeed. And that was how we found you. Junpei examined the 3 Reds again, just in case. On the bottom of each was a long, thin gap. It looked like a slot for something, probably something electronic. Well, this isn't good. If the Reds are inactive, we can't keep going. Well, what about that hallway over there? Isn't there anywhere we can go? No, there isn't. There are plenty more hospital rooms, but nothing else. Hospital rooms? That's what's behind all those doors? Yes. There are a number of individual rooms, in addition to this large one. There was a door at the end of the hallway, but it was locked. There was an astrological symbol engraved near the keyhole, however. I was able to get a good feel for it. I believe it was the symbol of Jupiter. Not again. Those goddamn things are everywhere. I wonder what they all mean. For a moment, everyone was silent, deep in thought. While we're asking what things mean, what's the deal with this room? I mean, I thought this was a cruise ship, but I can't imagine a cruise ship would have a hospital like this. Of all the people, it was 7 who answered, with calm confidence. Well, I figure it's probably a hospital ship. Chances are it's the Gigantic. The Gigantic? Junpei looked confused. So did everyone else. What's this Gigantic? 7 knit his brows for a moment, then began to explain. The Gigantic. He explained that she had been a sister ship to the Titanic, built in the early 20th centuries. The Titanic actually had 2 sister ships, who were identical to one another in nearly every aspect. The Gigantic was said to be one of them. She was initially intended to be a passenger liner, like the Titanic, but soon after the ship was launched, the First World War began, and she was pressed into duty by the British Navy as a hospital ship. Ah, so spooky. I don't know if I mentioned this enough yet, but the Titanic absolutely freaks me out, somewhat. So, yeah, seeing all the visuals is like, ha ha ha. Sometime later, the Gigantic was damaged by a German mine in the Aegean Sea. She managed to run aground after the incident, and consequently was not sunk. What then happened to the Gigantic after her fateful encounter in the Aegean Sea? One theory ran that a man named Lord Gourdane purchased her. Lord Gourdane, it seemed, had been one of the few survivors of the Titanic tragedy, and that trauma had turned him into an obsessive collector of all things related to the Titanic. As his obsession deepened, he began to desire the ship itself. That, of course, wasn't possible. The Titanic lay at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The Gigantic, however, had not suffered such a dire fate, and she was nearly identical to her sister ship. She caught the eye of Lord Gourdane. So you're saying this Lord Gourdane bought this ship? Yeah, at least I think I am. That's impossible. No way we're on some boat that's almost 100 years old. Pipe down, just pay attention. What, that's it? Well, have you got any proof? Proof? Proof that this ship is really the Gigantic. Well, The ship's got stuff on it that's like the Titanic, and it's a hospital ship. So I just figured... Oh, for goodness, don't tell me that's your only reason. No, I've got more. Like? Well, I mean... Seven looked around desperately, doing anything to avoid meeting Lotus's piercing stare. He scratched his head for a moment. Then he gave up. Finally, he opened his mouth. I don't know. Lotus sighed and shook her head. I guess your memory isn't back yet then, is it? Yeah, sorry about that. Hey, wait a minute. Memory isn't back? Junpei was, he felt, legitimately shocked by what seemed to be new and very important information. Everyone else, however, seemed unimpressed. In fact, they all looked at Junpei as though he had said something very strange. He decided to revise his attitude for the next question. Wait, was I the only one that didn't know? Everyone nodded. Why? Oh yeah, I guess I didn't tell you, huh? Oh shit. I told the rest of them before we ran into you on the stairs. I told them I couldn't remember a damn thing from before I woke up. What? Then, almost as if to save Junpei from further embarrassment. A bell began to ring far away. It sounded as though it was the clock at the main stairway. Junpei counted each chime carefully. 10, 11, 12. It's midnight. Then we still got 6 hours left, right? We don't have any time to screw around. Let's get going. We gotta find the missing parts for the red. What do you mean find? How on earth do you propose we do that? We looked everywhere in this room. That only leaves one place left to look. One? Well, I guess it's not really right. Huh? Wait. Don't tell me you mean we need to search all of the other rooms? Don't freak out. We already searched 4 of them. 4 rooms. We just gotta split up the rest between us, the 8 of us. If each person does 6 rooms, that'll be 48 rooms, right? So there are 48 left? Her earlier experience had apparently not encouraged Lotus to trust Seven. Seven scratched his head awkwardly. I don't know. ... After a little more discussion, they split up and headed towards the rooms to begin searching them. Junpei was chosen to search the rooms on the starboard side, moving from fore to aft. They also determined when they should return to report their findings, the next time the clock sounded the time. When it did, they'd meet back at the large central room full of beds. If, during their search, any one of them were to locate the missing components, they were to yell for the others. If this strategy failed, they'd return to discuss their options later. The details decided, they left to begin searching. Out of the hallway they went, each to the rooms they'd been assigned. However... Oh, there's a however. Let's see what that is. From far away, Junpei heard the bell ring. It did so only once. It was 1 a.m. He jogged through the entrance of the large hospital room to find 6 of the others already there. Ace, Santa, Clover, June, Seven, and Lotus. They had gathered in front of the door numbered 8. Or perhaps to be accurate, they had gathered in front of the red next to door number 8. Had one of them found the missing piece? What happened, guys? It was June who answered him. Jumpy, look! She was pointing at the red. He pushed through the others until he stood in front of it. Immediately, he knew what she meant. The display on the front of the red read vacant. Junpei sighed. Come on, guys, who was it? I thought we were supposed to yell if we found it. Well, Junpei wondered why she was hesitating. The others looked as confused as June, but kept their mouths shut. What the hell? What's up with you guys? They all knew something he didn't, and Junpei wasn't about to leave things that way. Finally, Lotus frowned and spoke. Well, that's the thing. We don't know. You don't know? When I got back, it was already like this. There was no one else here. That means I was the first one back, but the missing parts were already back in the red. Junpei looked at the bottom of the reds again, just to make sure. The slot that had been open at the bottom was now covered with metal. Clearly, whatever had been missing had been returned. What about the other two? They're the same. Junpei quickly examined the other two boxes. Satisfied that they were also repaired, but still very confused, he returned to the others. Alright, I just want to be sure here. Nobody has any idea what the hell happened here, right? Ace and June nodded silently. Seven raised his hands as if to say, not me, and Santa just shrugged. Only Clover lowered her head and did nothing. Huh? Wait a minute. That was when he noticed. Where's Snake? Junpei swept his eyes across the room a second time, but Snake was nowhere to be seen. Does that mean that he found them? I've no idea. There's nothing to suggest it, but nothing to suggest he didn't either. I don't suppose we'll know until we can ask him in person. Well, whatever he did or didn't do, he's pretty damn late. What the hell's he up to? Maybe he's lost? Yeah, well, that seems likely. Dude can't see. I don't know how he gets around in the first place. Clover raised her head. No, that's impossible! Suddenly, she was shouting. Hey, my brother's blind, but he's got really great hearing. He can get around as well as anyone who can see. So he couldn't get lost. That's impossible! Clover had started to shake, and the knuckles of her hands had gone white. She spun around, but before she did, Junpei noticed tears welling up in her eyes. I'm gonna go look for him! The words were barely out of her mouth when she began to run. Hey! Hold on, Clover, wait! Junpei cried out to her, but he was too slow. She kept going, and before anyone else could react, she was gone. Damn it! What should we do now? Well, the red is working now. No, we're not leaving two people behind. We should go look for them. Oh man, this ain't good. Oh yes, what an excellent idea. We just wasted a bunch of time looking for some piece of electronic junk. Now let's waste some more by looking for a couple of idiots. Then remain here if you feel you must, but there's no time. We've only 5 hours left. Junpei and the others nodded to one another and took off at a run. In front of the stairs that led to B deck, they decided to split up. They quickly assigned search areas and went their separate ways. Soon only 2 of them were left. Those 2 were Junpei and June, who had been a few steps behind the others. Alright, we should go too. Yes, let's go! But where should we start? Oh, let's see. Ooh, the casino, the first-class cabin, the hallway with all the rooms, or back to the large hospital room. Let's go to the casino. How about the casino on B deck? Okay, sounds good. They took off up the stairs at a run. Oh, before they knew it, they were there. So was Lotus. She was leaning against the wall, examining her nails. Hey, what do you think you're doing? She glanced up at him, unimpressed. Isn't it obvious? I'm looking for Snake. I'm just not seeing it. Really? Maybe you need to look harder. Junpei didn't think that was the problem. Oh, by the way, I've got a proposal for you two. Care to hear it? Oh, why not? We'll listen to what Lotus has to say. What is it? Well, I don't like to beat around the bush, so I'll get right to it. Why don't we team up? Team up? Yeah. What, do you need me to explain it to you? I'm saying, why don't we go through a numbered door? Even if we wanted to, that's impossible. Why? Junpei's bracelet number is 5, mine is 6, and yours is 8. Our digital root would be 1. 5 plus 6 plus 8 is 19. 1 plus 9 equals 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1. But there's no number 1 door in that large hospital room. The only doors there are 3, 7, and 8. Then we just add another person. Uh-huh. Who? What, isn't that easy? 7. She was right. If they added 7, 5 plus 6 plus 8 plus 7 is 26. 2 plus 6 equals 8. Then the 4 of them could go through the number 8 door. But... Whoa, hold on a second. What about the other 4? Why don't you add them up? That was simple enough. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. The digital roots for those 4 would be 1. That's right. And you know the number 1 door isn't down in the big hospital room, right? Of course I know that. No, are you saying we'd leave them behind? Of course not. What kind of woman do you think I am? Once we get off the ship, we can come back and rescue them, couldn't we? Then we wouldn't really be leaving them behind. Don't try to lie to us. I don't think you'd do anything of the sort. Really? Why do you think that? You remember, don't you? We have less than 5 hours left, even if we manage to escape. There's no way we could come back to rescue them in less than 5 hours. Well, you never know until you try. No, you're not thinking this through. Even if we brought 7 with us, we wouldn't be able to get off the ship. The 4 of us couldn't open door 9. It is hidden, but an exit can be found. Seek a way out. Seek a door that carries a 9. Yeah, that's right. Digital root for the 4 of us would be 8, so we'd have to add Ace to make 9. Right. Unless we bring Ace too, we'd be stuck. Lotus scratched the back of her ear. Oh, Well, that's unfortunate. She didn't sound particularly bothered by what Junpei said, nor did she seem particularly surprised. Well, let's try and find another way, okay? A way to get out of here with all 8 of us. That's impossible. Are you being serious? You do know that only 5 people, at most, can go through one of the numbered doors, right? The number 9 isn't going to be an exception to that rule. Regardless, at least 3 people will get left behind. You're right, that's true. The moment he said it, Junpei felt a chill run down his spine. It was true. How Lotus could remain cavalier about so terrifying a prospect was beyond him. When they found the number 9, they would have to choose which 3 of them would die. Lotus's forehead furrowed. Do you think I could have a moment alone? There's some things I need to think about. Junpei and June turned and began walking away from Lotus. Talking to her had left them feeling ill. Junpei's heart felt heavy and his steps sluggish. But he told himself pessimism would get them nowhere. So he forced himself to smile and turned to June. Hey, let's just try to focus on finding Snake for now, okay? Yeah, you're right. We can think about those other things later. Junpei nodded. Alright, where should we go next? Let's go to the first class cabin, since we're already here. Well, let's go take a look at that first class cabin. It's really close. They turned around and took off down the hallway to the left. Outside of the first class cabin, they found Clover. She was standing in front of the wall. She was staring at a meaningless point on the wall, her eyes blank. Oh, what should we do? Let's leave Clover alone. She was shouting and not doing so hot earlier, so we shan't bug her. Something told Junpei that Clover probably wasn't in much of a mood to talk. He leaned over and whispered quietly to June. Maybe we should leave her alone. Yeah, I think you're right. They turned and walked quietly down the stairs. Clover had driven home the misery of their situation, but Junpei told himself that getting depressed would get them nowhere but depressed. For Clover's sake, they had to find Snake, and fast. He did his best to push away the misery and depression and forced a smile. So where do you think we should go next? Ooh, back to the casino? Or let's go to the hallway with all the rooms. Hey, why don't we go back to C deck? We can take a look at the hallway with all the rooms. Okay, let's get going then. Together they ran down the stairs. Ahead of them, farther down the hallway, they spotted Ace. Hey! Snake! Where are you? Answer me if you're there! Junpei paused. What do you want to do? Why not? Let's go talk to Ace. I think we barely even talked to Ace this game. With June in tow, Junpei jogged up to Ace. Hearing their footsteps, he turned to greet them. Ah, hello there. Snake is, well, that's obvious, isn't it? I assume you haven't found him yet either. Junpei nodded. I really wonder where he could have gone. Well, wherever he's disappeared to, we must find him as quickly as we can. For Clover's sake. Right. June's face looked kinda enraptured. By the way, do you think Clover and Snake are really siblings? Ah, why would you say that? Why would you say that? The question seemed somehow odd to Junpei. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? They don't really look alike at all. Ace looked at him for a moment and then spoke. Ah, yes, now that you mention it, they don't. Now that you mention it. Still, there are a great many siblings who don't look like one another. It certainly isn't rare. Junpei wasn't sure why, or even if he was seeing what he thought he was, but he could have sworn that Ace's face tightened when he spoke. At any rate, we really must find Snake as soon as possible. The clock is ticking. We really can't afford to waste any time. Very well. Let's get back to the search, shall we? You can leave this area to me. All right. Let's go, Jumpy. At June's urging, they left. They found themselves back at the stairs, but Junpei's mind was in turmoil. There was so much to think about, but no, it would have to be put aside for now. As Ace said, finding Snake was their top priority. Junpei did his best to clear his mind. Alright, where do we go next? Let's go to, I guess, back to the large hospital room. It's the only spot we haven't looked at yet. Why don't we go back to the big hospital room? Okay, let's go back then. They turned and headed back towards the large hospital room. On their way to the large hospital room, Junpei and June noticed Santa, standing next to the number 3 door. Junpei paused. Let's talk to Santa. Junpei and June walked up to Santa. What are you doing? What, can't you tell? I'm checking out the red. Why? Is there something bothering you? What? It's not bothering you? Uh-huh. The guts of this red. Why wouldn't you wonder who the hell put it back here? Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm curious too, but who do you think did it? Santa's eyes narrowed as he looked at June's. She shook her head. I don't know. Well, what about you, Junpei? Who do you think fixed this thing for us? Maybe Snake? Lotus? Zero? Or someone other than the 8 of us? Snake's the one we haven't talked to yet, because he's obviously disappeared. But Lotus found them and says that she didn't do anything to him. And then obviously there's Zero, who wanted to repair his death game. Or her death game? Their death game. Zero's death game. Let's roll. Anyway, we'll say Snake, maybe? Let's say Snake. Well, it seems like it'd have to be Snake, wouldn't it? Maybe he got back here before any of us? Found the parts somewhere, put them back, and then went through one of the numbered doors somehow? No, that's not possible. You have to authenticate with at least 3 people. The red won't open the door. There's no way a single person can get through there by themselves. Yeah, I guess you're right. It was a stupid mistake, and Junpei knew it. How had he made such a foolish miscalculation? And how had Santa noticed it so quickly? Perhaps he just wasn't as clever as he used to be. Junpei shook his head sadly. So in other words, one of us is the person who fixed the reds. Santa grinned. Bingo. We have a winner. But if that's true, then the person who did it doesn't want the rest of us to know they fixed the red. Yep. But why? No idea. Maybe if they come clean on that, it'd mean we could find out something else. Something bad. Something bad? Don't know. But whatever it is, it's gotta be worth hiding. Of course. Could have had something to do with Snake's disappearance. You think that maybe they did something to Snake? It's not out of the question. Junpei stared at Santa. There was something about him that made Junpei wary. At first he assumed the other man wasn't terribly clever, but Junpei was beginning to think he'd need to reevaluate that assessment. When Santa spoke again, his voice was quiet. Look, if you trust anybody in this game, you're gonna lose. You've gotta be careful. The person you trust the most could turn out to be the one who stabs you in the back. With that depressing suggestion, he turned and quietly walked away. Junpei and June looked at one another and smiled awkwardly. Where do we go next? Oh, let's finish searching. We've looked everywhere, unfortunately. They looked everywhere they could think of, but Snake was nowhere to be found. Lotus looked around at the 6 frustrated faces and spoke. We can't keep looking for Snake. Wherever he is, it's not here. We need to get moving. Junpei couldn't disagree with what she was saying. Snake seemed to have completely disappeared. There was no point in wasting any more time. The others seemed to be having similar thoughts, but they stayed silent. Finally, Seven spoke. We don't got a choice. Lotus is right. We're not going to find Snake. There's a problem, though. We got to figure out who's going to go through which door. Yes, I have a proposal. She walked back and forth across the floor, her heels clicking against the wood. Finally, she stopped. Why don't we decide on one person to sacrifice? Sacrifice? Well, perhaps it's a bit of a harsh word, but yes. You've all figured it out by now, haven't you? We all can't go through these doors. If we split up into 2 teams of 4 and 3 people, respectively, then 3 people will be left behind. If we split into 2 teams, 5 and 2 people, then 2 people will be left behind. But if we split into 2 groups of 3 and leave 1 person out, then only 1 person will be left behind. Behind 3 people with 2 teams of 4 and 3. She's probably right on that one, because I think your pairs, we have door 3, 7, and 8. And to go through there, we pretty much need to either take, 7 Lotus or Santa, and then add 9 to that number. Your pairs of 9 are Ace and Lotus, Snake and 7, Snake is missing, Santa and June, Clover and Junpei. Yeah, so there's not a way to really make that work. I think she's unfortunately correct. She was right. It wasn't pleasant, but she was right. There wasn't any way that the numbers worked out. If one group was 4, and the other group would always have a digital route that didn't match a door. When Seven spoke, his voice was strained. Then you're saying we gotta decide who's to stay behind? Yes, we do. Given our circumstances, it's logically and morally the best solution. If the other 6 are to survive, then 1 person has to sacrifice themselves. No, that's too cruel. What's so cruel about it? To just sacrifice someone like that? Then what's your plan? Maybe we should sacrifice 2 people instead of just 1. That's not what I meant. We shouldn't sacrifice anyone. I told you, that's impossible. Wake up. Whoa, calm down, you 2. Santa stepped between Lotus and June. Look, what Lotus is trying to say is that we should aim to bring the greatest amount of happiness to the greatest number of people, right? Exactly. That's how democracy works. Lotus is democracy, at least. And for that reason, I think it's only fair way to decide who'll be sacrificed is through a vote. What do you think? No, that's terrible. I'm not asking you. Shut up. What about you, Santa? Me? Well, I agree, I guess. All right, that's 1 vote for. Counting mine, that's 2. 7? I can't say I agree with you, but we don't exactly have a choice. If we don't do something, we're all gonna die. Glad to see you get it. If I can get 1 more vote, then it's decided. What about you, Clover? Clover had moved away from the group and was sitting on one of the beds. Her whole body drooped. Junpei didn't know if she'd heard Lotus's proposal. Lotus walked over to Clover and gently laid a hand on her shoulder. Your brother has to be behind one of those numbered doors. We searched everywhere, but we didn't find him. Doesn't that mean he has to have gone through one of them? Clover slowly lifted her face. Let's go look for him together, okay? If we sacrifice 1 person, then we can go look for him. You agree with me, right? Clover nodded once. The motion carries. What a bitch, by the way. That's a horrible thing to do to Clover right now. Anyway, Lotus spun around and walked towards Junpei. Now, let's start a vote, too. Oh, that won't be necessary. Ace had barely spoken for Lotus's entire speech, and everyone jumped a little. 6 pairs of eyes turned to look at him. He didn't seem to notice, or even care. I will stay. That should solve our problems, yes? Whoa. Ace, what are you saying? No, you can't do that. That won't solve anything. June's voice shook, and she looked around desperately for someone to agree with her. Ace simply looked at her. June, I'm afraid you may have misunderstood me. I said I would stay, but I never said I would sacrifice myself. Huh? I trust you, each and every one of you. I believe you'll come back for me. Whoa, whoa, whoa there. That's optimistic, and then there's just nuts. Those doors only go one way. You go in, and you don't come out. If we go through them, you won't be able to return, correct? Yeah. True, but that will not be the case once you've escaped from the ship. What? Please, I beg of you, once you've escaped, come back and rescue me. Ideally, within the time limit Zero has given us. No, that's ridiculous. There's no way we can get back in time. Finally, Junpei could hold his tongue no longer. We've only got 5 hours left. We don't even know where the hell we are. How on earth are we going to find someone to come and rescue you? And perhaps you would prefer to stay instead of me? Perhaps you would be willing to leave June behind? Ace's voice was dignified, and without a hint of cruelty or malice. Junpei had no rebuttal. You see, there is no other choice. Then I see we've come to our conclusion. Go on. Don't worry yourselves about me. Go quickly. Junpei stood frozen by indecision, unable to move. June bit her lips so hard that Junpei feared she would break skin. Santa stood against the wall, calm and aloof. Seven tore his beanie from his head and turned it over anxiously in his hands. Only Clover stared at Ace, with an expression that Junpei was unable to decipher. Otis's attitude was different, however, from the others. Good. Let's accept his kind offer, then. She smiled, her eyes bright. Ace answered with a smile of his own. Good. I think this is the best for me. Perhaps I'll be able to take a nap. Perhaps it's my age, but I get tired so easily these days. As he spoke, Ace lowered himself down to the floor next to one of the beds. From somewhere deep in the ship, Junpei suddenly heard the screeching of metal on metal. It was almost as if the ship itself was screaming. Would it really hold until the time limit was up? Already, D-Deck was flooded. In the sudden silence, the only sound was the sad metal wail of the ship. Unsurprisingly, it was Lotus who spoke first. Well, what are we waiting for? We're wasting time. Why don't we hurry it up? As if a spell had been broken, the others all began to talk at once. You're right, we should get going. That's all we can do now, right? 7? Seriously, honestly, I was getting kind of sick of listening to you guys talk. You too, Santa? I have to find my brother. Wait, all of you? Let's just calm down and think about this. There has to be a way to get everyone out. There has to be. Right, Jumpy? Say something. Yeah, let's think. There's gotta be another way. His words sounded hollow and fake. Fine. Forget about it. I'll figure it out on my own. She spun around and ran towards Ace. He had slumped down next to the bed when June grabbed his arm and pulled. Come on, Ace, please stand up. You can't give up yet. We just have to sit down together and think about it. We'll figure a way out of this. That way we can all get out of here. Then it happened. Ace fell forward. He slumped over onto the wooden floor, his body folded in half like a boxer out cold. Ace! June cried out and dropped to her knees beside him. She put her arms around his neck and did her best to lift him up. What happened, Ace? Say something! She shook him frantically. His eyes fluttered open. I'm all right. His voice was weak and slightly slurred. How are you fine? This. He held out his left hand and slowly opened it. It was a syringe and a small vial. The vial was empty. It had only recently been emptied. A few drops clung to the sides. It was a label taped to the side of the container. It read, Sopril Beta. Sopril Beta? Junpei had no idea what it meant, or what kind of medicine it might be. Did you just do this? Yes. It's just anesthetic. I'll be fine. Anesthetic? I found it earlier while we were searching the hospital rooms. I thought it might be useful later. I didn't think I'd be using it on myself. Why? Why did you do this? Didn't I tell you? I'd like to take a nap. I really am very tired. Junpei knew that wasn't why he'd done it. Ace had injected himself with an anesthetic to forestall Junpei and Jun's attempts to bring him along. If he couldn't move, there was nothing they could do. He injected himself so that they would be forced to leave him behind. Ace! Is there something you want to say? I'd just like to sleep a little. Could you keep it down? No! Don't, Ace! Don't fall asleep! You feel warm. So comfortable. I think I'll have a nice dream. Ace's eyelids drooped further and further, almost as though he were dying. Ace! Ace! She shook his shoulder again and again, but this time he didn't respond. Only the gentle rising and falling of his chest told them he was alive. Junpei was relieved to see he was, in fact, still breathing. He lifted Ace up off the floor and laid him on the bed they'd been leaning against. When Junpei turned around, Lotus gave him a look of pity. Well, we don't really have a choice now. We can't let a sacrifice go to waste, right? She wasn't feeling any remorse, and Junpei was sure of that. Still, he held no grounds upon which to oppose her. It felt wrong, but he had to agree. Then suddenly, Santa spoke. Yeah, but we're not done choosing yet, are we? Huh? What do you mean? Well, we haven't decided who's going in what door. Yes, that's true. Well, enough of this screwing around. Let's decide. You first, Lotus. Which door do you want? Well, I want door number 8. It's the same number as my bracelet. Got it. You're 8. You're next, 7. Which door do you want? I'll take 7. Can't get along with that old lady. What? What did you just say? Her face distorted by rage, Lotus took a step towards 7. He threw up his hands and made a face like a child, caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Ugh! You're gonna get it next time. She shot him a glare that would have melted steel, then turned and stalked off. Alright, who's next? Santa's gaze moved across the 3 people left. Finally, they stopped on Junpei. Junpei, which door do you want? At last. Junpei's mind was already made up. Alright, and I think actually with that, we are going to call it for now. So that was pretty dramatic. Ace put himself to bed, and now we get to pick which door we want to do. I assume either 7 or 8. Spoopy. Alright, well, hey, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. This is Scotty J signing off, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!